Hey guys, Terry Red here. In this video, I decided, I wasn't feeling the best today, so instead of working on stuff or playing stuff or whatever, I figured I'd just make a video to get you guys caught up onto a lot of new changes and happenings in Future Pinball Land. Some pretty significant things actually. So yeah, I'm just going to go through that in this video here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, the new BAM update. Rav Arcade has updated BAM to version 1.5373. Now, this is a huge, very significant update. One, because basically a lot of the stuff behind the scenes, he's updated it to be way more efficient. In a lot of the things it does. So Future Pinball can run much better and BAM can run much better. The other thing he's done is he's added new features that allowed for a new FizX 3.3 update, which I will be getting into as well. And the biggest one is he's completely redone BAM Open VR. So in the past, VR with Future Pinball has worked for some, but not others, or there's been odd issues or sync issues. He's completely redone everything, and now all of that has been fixed. So now VR works for everyone and works correctly now. And so I'll get a little bit more into that. So as a result of this big BAM update, that is huge. I've now updated the Future Pinball BAM Essentials All-in-One to version 2.3, which includes the new BAM update, the new BAM Open VR, a new all-in-one example tutorial for anyone who wants to update Future Pinball tables, and all my guides have been updated. So, if you already had a previous install, get this new version and it can work for any install. It doesn't matter if it's an old one, a new one. Everyone can install this no matter what you used before. It will not hurt anything. Just follow the instructions and you'll be good. Uh, so, as a result of all of that, we were able to get FizX updated. That's right. J. Lou went and he was waiting for the newer BAM updates to be finalized because we found a few bugs that we had to sort through to get fixed on in BAM, but those got all fixed. So as a result, FizX is now updated to version 3.3. So the main big difference is the code is able to be much more efficient. So you combine FizX code, which uses new BAM features, combined with the newer BAM update, which is also much more efficient. It allows tables updated with FizX 3.3 to be way less taxing on your CPU as a result, especially compared to 3.2. So for some people with the Indiana Jones Fortune and Glory table, they found that was pretty demanding on their older CPU. Now it runs great for them. You know what I mean? So this is a huge, huge difference for that. So as a result of that, we updated the all-in-one example table for anyone who wants to update a Future Pinball table to add all this stuff to it here. And I included that as well in the all-in-one as well, if you want to use that table and guide to update tables yourself. Uh, so as a result of FizX getting updated, well, then I had to go back and update all PinEvent tables to now use FizX 3.3. So not only are they all now updated, the V2 and the light tables are updated, but some of them, like Star Wars and Sonic, have had a bunch of new updates or features added to them, or animations, especially with Sonic. So there are some actual table updates on top of that, and all of them have other little features like debugging features allows you to do some things, or you can change if the desktop camera view will toggle with your plunger. You can turn that on and off. And the other big thing is raycast shadows now. Before you had to turn that off in the table script and uh, and the BAM menu afterward for each table. You don't have to do that anymore. Now you can just turn it off in the table script. I'll just not a PinEvent table, but you guys will get the point. So basically, you'll have the option to turn this off. If you turn that off in the table script, it will turn it off permanently. You don't have to do anything in the BAM menu after that, no matter what. All right. So whereas before you had to turn this off, load the table, go into the BAM menu, and then turn that off. You no longer have to do that with these new table updates. All right. And this is the other thing I was talking about, the toggle static camera view. So this is only for desktop views. If you want to disable that, then when you hit your plunger button, it will no longer toggle between each of the preset views I added to the table. All right. So yeah, those are and yeah, I think you already knew about the lighting options that were in there before, but yeah, and we'll get back to talking about this table later. But yeah, so all these have that and other things. It's all described in the update notes for each table. So yeah, so as a result of the new BAM update, the new FizX update, and then the new table updates, all of these tables run much much better now. So I highly recommend you get all of those installed and updated, and make sure you use the new pup packs that come with them as well, right? Because they do get updated. Older pup packs won't work with newer table updates, depending on the version that you're using, because the table checks for that. If the pup pack is an older, incorrect version, it won't load the pup pack at all. So the pup pack I include with these tables, make sure you install those, remove the old one, install the new one. That way you know for sure it's running right, and then make sure you run the batch file to change the option for what you need. Right? It's all described in the install instructions, which all of those have been updated as well. So make sure you read those as well. So so now that you've got all that, the other big thing that this BAM update that I talked about earlier is a big change is BAM Open VR. This is a huge update that we've waited years for, basically. So again, I mentioned before that for in over the years, there's been kind of changes to Open VR and then BAM and then other things over the years, and sometimes updates would be the result of VR and Future Pinball working for some people but not for others, or uh, there'd be weird sync problems, and there's just no consistency with it, so, or if you might have a Rift user or a Quest user playing it just fine, but a Pico user can't use it. So as a result, Ravercade went back and basically redid everything, fixed all the sync issues that we've had. So now VR runs great for everyone. Like it runs correctly and perfectly for everyone, whether it's a Pico, a MetaQuest, or Vive or whatever else. Like all those sync issues have been resolved, and as well. Way more efficient behind the scenes. It runs much better. And a couple other fixes too that, since I did my Open VR guide video, a couple of little things that can help make things a little bit easier experience. But the bottom line is VR is working fantastic. So as far as a couple little things that he made a change to, now I highly recommend you read through this guide. It really has a lot of very helpful info. Okay, and I updated my results because since then my PC's been upgraded. So now I have this is my current PC. You know, so I got myself a 47 Ti Super. So yeah, I'm very happy right now, guys. VR has been running fantastic for me now. When I can actually play it. Today's definitely not one of those days. Not feeling the best, but and I showed you the updated results. Again, I just take you through all the normal stuff, but just go through, read through this stuff. Very helpful stuff. I've added extra files for you guys. But one of the big differences is before we had, let me see if I can find it here. Well, okay, this is the one big difference is before we could not use Open Composite with Future Pinball in VR. For whatever reason, it just wouldn't work right, and I'm not sure what changed. But with the newest version of the Oculus software installed, so that would be this here. I think it's like 62, I think, right now. Hey, yeah, it doesn't even know what my computer is. That's why it's complaining. So if you have the newest version of this software installed, and you have the newest Open Composite DLL installed into BAM, then it will actually work. And if you don't know what Open Composite is, for MetaQuest or Rift users, normally we would have to go through Steam VR to use PC VR games or apps instead of direct support for the Oculus runtime. So as a result, you had that extra layer always running, and even and with Visual Pinball, it's the same thing. No one likes using Steam VR. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Oh God, sorry. No one likes using Steam VR. It's just an extra layer. It just makes everything a pain in the butt. So Open Composite for Rift and MetaQuest users allows you to completely bypass Steam VR and Open VR, and it just goes directly to the Oculus runtime. So that way it runs much better, more efficiently, more stable, more correctly, I guess is the better way to describe it, and then you don't have to deal with Steam VR popping up or getting in the way or causing focus problems or other oddball stuff. So it's much better for Link and AirLink users. So anyone who uses a Link cable or AirLink with this app, now you can use Open Composite. No more Steam VR. It's fantastic. You know, so that's what this section's describing. Everything here. I've added a new folder and a new batch file. So that's these guys here. So this is an extra BAM OpenVR Open Composite folder. The only difference between the normal one and this one is this is only used for Open Composite. Okay, because excuse me, because the only difference is in the plugins folder, this file right here is your Open Composite version of the DLL for VR, whereas in here it's the original one. Okay, that's the only that's basically the main difference, between the two. So I've also added another batch file here so that if you want to start Future Pinball in VR with the correct settings automatically, then you run this and then it will run FP Loader from this folder instead of this folder. Or if you want to run it from Steam VR and say Virtual Desktop, then you have to run this one, which will then use this folder, which then uses Steam VR instead. Now, and it all works fantastic. It really runs really well. The only problem is if you are using Open Composite, then you absolutely have to have your OpenXR default set to Oculus. It won't work unless you have that set. So if you use if you use the XR Runtime Picker that I included in here, then you'll see that I have mine set to Oculus right now because that's what I was using. I was using this with Link for testing prior, right? But if you're using Virtual Desktop and you want to use VDXR with say Visual Pinball with over Virtual Desktop, well then this won't work because you have to have this as the default to allow this to work. And this is required if you want to use Open Composite with Visual Pinball through Virtual Desktop. You can't run Future Pinball through Virtual Desktop using Open Composite because that won't work because it only works with a VDXR, which is 64-bit only. So only the 64-bit Visual Pinball can work this way through Virtual Desktop. The 32-bit one cannot. So anyone who's using Virtual Desktop, yeah, you can't unfortunately use the Open Composite setup, and you can't have this set that way. But if you're a Link user, well then this doesn't matter to you at all because you just leave this set, and then both Visual Pinball and Future Pinball can now use Open Composite, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit for Visual Pinball. And for Future Pinball, it's only 32-bit, and they all work awesome. No Steam VR is needed. So that is a huge, huge deal for a lot of people. Like, that's a very big deal because a lot of people wanted to play Future Pinball but couldn't because they couldn't use Virtual Desktop. They could only use a Link cable. So this is a huge deal, guys. So yeah, it's a bit much to explain, but I go through everything in the guide that explains how you guys need to do this. What settings you need to use and all that good stuff. So yeah. Now myself personally, I recommend not using Steam Link. It's still it's not great. The video quality is horrible. It's a pain to use. It's got nice features, but it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. So either use Virtual Desktop with Steam VR or use MetaQuest Link with Open Composite. Those are the best options to use by far. Okay. Now the only other changes. Oh yes, for VR is we had a problem before, and you saw it in my previous OpenVR video, where if you go to hit the BAM menu when you're in windowed mode, or when it would pop focus out of Future Pinball for whatever reason. Every time you hit the BAM menu key, it would take focus out of Future Pinball when you were in windowed mode for some reason. That has been fixed now. So every time you push the BAM menu key, it actually forces focus back into Future Pinball. Whether you're windowed or full screen, it doesn't matter. For VR, that's a huge deal, right? Because the problem is if you run Virtual Desktop with Steam VR, it takes focus away from Future Pinball when Steam VR pops up. And before you had to use the mouse to click back into it. Well, whereas now you have two options to get focus back into Future Pinball. You can use the BAM menu key, or now you can use the BAM reset key or the home key, which is F12 by default. Okay? So either one of those options will now bring focus back into Future Pinball automatically for you, whether you're running just in normal windowed mode or especially when you're running in VR mode. Now, if you're using Open Composite, you probably won't have a focus problem with VR, but with Steam VR and Virtual Desktop, that is a pain in the butt. So that can help a lot with that. So those are the big changes for VR. That's a lot to go through, but it's very important that you guys understand that. So I highly recommend, if you've never tried VR with Future Pinball, if you've got a fast computer, you know, absolutely give it a try. It looks amazing. Like it's, in my opinion, my favorite VR pinball in VR, just because of the lighting, the way the rendering, the lighting looks compared to any other system. It just looks different, and I love it. And I make my stuff on there, so of course I'm gonna be biased, right? But yeah, this gives you an idea of the PCs that I'm using. If you have a PC like this, you'll be pretty good. You'll just have to disable reflections and maybe raycast shadows. But if you have a really nice computer like what I have now, then you can pretty much run almost everything maxed out now. You know what I mean? So it depends on what you have. Be realistic with your expectations, and you can see my results here. So yeah, okay, no more of that. All right, so I guess we've gone through all of that. So okay, so I guess I'll talk about one more thing, which is my current project, which is, now that I spent a bunch of time with all of this stuff for the last while. Every time there's a big new update, I have to do a lot of testing. I have to spend a lot of time with that. Then I have to go through FizX testing, spend a lot of time with that, getting this updated, and then I go through and update every table with those new updates. It takes a long time, guys, and then depends on how I'm feeling as well. And today's a perfect example. I feel absolutely crappy today, so I don't want to play anything today or test anything today, or work on anything today or update anything today. So depending on how I'm feeling, it takes a long time before I get to work on projects, right? So I'll just talk about what I've been working on, and which will be the next thing I finish before I get back to work on Silent Hill, which has been the Masters of the Universe Collector's Edition. So this has been something I've been working on for a while. I always told everyone that if I was to update this table for any reason, it would not be a simple small update. It would be a big game-changing update, something like Sonic Pinball Mania was. And that's exactly what this thing is. So if if you go to VP Universe or Pinball Nirvana or VP forums, you can see my updates on these sites. So I started with the original Future Pinball table by Rom. This is Rom's original Future Pinball table. Made many years ago, many years ago. And then at one point, I updated and modded this table myself for the Mastered Edition, which added a few things, added videos to it, added DOF to it, and then eventually, years later, I assisted R&R with the conversion of this to Visual Pinball, as a favor to him. I honestly had no care to do it myself because I was happy with the Future Pinball version. But he wanted to do that, and so it was a lot of back and forth between him and me. He would send the table, his initial conversion to me. I would find things, fix them, and then send it back, and then he would send it back and forth. So I spent a lot of time helping him out with that conversion, and then eventually, and because it was a conversion of my mod of the table, right? So I knew Future Pinball really well, whereas he didn't. So I helped him out a lot with that conversion, and then I eventually added the pup pack to it. If you go on my YouTube channel, you can see my older videos about that, and of course the DOF that I added to it as well, right? Well, years later, I've always said that I'm not going to do an update to the Future Pinball table unless it's going to be a huge update, and that's what this is all about. So that's what I've been working on. This has been quite a bit of a journey here. So this is the original Future Pinball table. No BAM updates, no nothing, right? So then this is how it looks when I add my lighting initially to it. This is how it's going to look when I change all of Future Pinball's lighting, BAM settings. So you can see the difference. There's no real-time dynamic lights used for GI or anything whatsoever. So it's a huge difference compared to, the old days before BAM versus how I start with a BAM update, So it's a huge difference. So then now you can see I've added all actual GI to the table, real-time dynamic lighting for the GI. So that's the first start of the project, and then I just, progress to get it better and better. But then things like the plastics need to be updated. So then that's what this is all about, to try to add a lighting layer for the plastics that I can then adjust for RGB lighting. So now you have the GI with real-time dynamic lights lighting up the table, You know, you went from here to the only difference is now the actual lights added to the table, right? So then, and you can see I can change the colors now for RGB if I want. So then I eventually added mesh inserts. So that's what I've been doing on most of my table updates, right? Like they don't have like an actual, 3D model in them. So I add 3D models of each insert with a nice bump map texture with a Schlabber 34's insert images that he made, and I do that for all the main lights. And then eventually I'll update the artwork for shadow maps, for like just global shadows, like ambient shadows, using BAM to do that. And then I add a decal layer on top of that because the original table did not have that, right? Because it just used flat image shaped lights of what was on there, right? So there was no models. So I have to add that extra layer there. And then you can see the progress of how that's looking, which compared to the original already looks a million times better. And that's not even in motion. This is just still pictures. When you see it in motion, it's a night and day difference. So you can see I've got like, GL lighting in the drain and all that. So it's looking really nice, right? Well, then I'm at the point where like, okay, I want to update some of these models. Like Rom did an amazing job, on the original, but he didn't have the resources that we have today for 3D scans and 3D printing and everything else. So I was able to source some 3D scans of actual original 80s toys, the ones I grew up with as a kid, I had a nice collection as a kid, and so this is literally the toy I played with, 3D scanned into a model. So I got a bunch of those with some help from Joey B there, and I've started the process of converting some of them, so this is the original, which was like, I don't know how many million polygons, and then it was down to like, maybe 60,000 as a result. And then after that, you can see this is Rom's original, which he made himself. And then he used basically just a flat image from the toy, from a picture, to try to texture that as best he could. Whereas this is all an actual full 3D model of all the details and everything. There's no, faked bump mapping. This is the actual model there, right? So you can see the huge difference between one and the other, right? And on the back, you can see because he didn't have anything to texture the back of it. He just had a front projected image. Well, that's why you see that, right? But when you're playing, you don't normally see that. So you can see the huge difference between the two, right? So then there he is. Got him in there, and then I eventually went to the trouble of making his arms, head, torso as separate animating models. So that way I could do full independent animations, whereas before all he did was rotate left and right. He didn't do any animation, right? That's all he did. Whereas now I can do complete animation to make it look like, he's from Toy Story or something like that, because I absolutely wanted to make that work, and it worked out great. It's not easy. I had to basically use these as FBX BAM models because these are on an angle, these arms. So when they rotate, they have to rotate with an offset angle, and I can't do that with a toy while still keeping the angle correct because I'm going to have all four of these pieces move while animating in a BAM mini playfield. So I had to come up with a bunch of new code to manually rotate all these components on their own while also being captured in a mini playfield while also rotating back and forth, and then having code to control all that independently from each other for animated sequences. So there wasn't something in Future Pinball I could use for that. So I had to go through the process of figuring out how to do that. And it worked out really well. I was really proud of how that turned out. And yeah, if you want to go full Exorcist, you can do that, And then eventually I added his sword and shield back, because I was going to have them separate, but then I eventually added them in as as part of the model. And there you go, so he's got his sword in his right hand, and he looks super detailed now. And then the new lighting I added with spotlights, it looks absolutely amazing. Like, it really, compared to the original, there's no comparison. It just, the newer updates that BAM allows is amazing. And this is all real-time dynamic lighting. This isn't like baked lighting, you know what I mean? So I can move these lights around or whatever, and they just work. Right? It looks, especially in VR, oh my God, it looks amazing. So you can see the difference, right? So that's the original, So, actually, you're not going to have any sound, but you can see the original. fits between them. Now, for really animated, I got a bunch of different custom animations. You know, that I can almost any kind of combination. It's really, really neat. You know, it just elevates it so much. Look at that. My toy for me just came alive in front of me. This is some of the new lighting I added for That's awesome. And I already showed disco lighting. So then also I had it where I have the PinEvent multi-ball where you grip the power. So now he'll animate. So by the power of great ball. Now I can use BAM features to use RAM And here you can see Skeletor, that's the original, and I did the same thing with Skeletor. I got a scan of the 80s toy model, and I separated all the arms, the head, and the torso, so that he can do his own separate individual animation, because before, he didn't do anything. He just sat on there and
You're supposed to be frightened?
Whereas now...
Not me, you fool!
So all of this...
Clever, you muscle-bound moron! Not a chance, muscle brain! I'll teach you to make a fool out of me!
Just a huge thing. So yeah, I'm really happy with how that turned out, So another thing I did was I added a Fisto Fist for the auto launcher, so that'll smash your balls. That sounds funny, but it'll smash your ball when it launches it. And then I also added Orko. That's the original Orko toy I played with as a kid, scanned in, and same thing as the others. I added him in, and I made his arms separate models that can be animated. So then they can rotate up and down independently, or rotate around, and then I can also have him hover up and down, or rotate, or fly around the table. So that will play into one of the modes later on, as well as a very key new feature that I added, which I'll get into. And then at this point, this is where I'm starting to realize, wow, okay, I'm not going to just do a cool update. This is becoming like a new table now. And so you can see now we have bonus multipliers for different characters. And that's collected by running over all the rollover lanes, but you can toggle these with your flippers. So when you hit a shot in the ramp and it comes down, you can then toggle which one is lit, and then you can hit all four, and then that will then progress these, and that way when you drain your ball, there's now an end of ball multiplier and bonuses that you get, which the original game had none of that. The original game just had 4 multi-balls, and that's it. There was no other game code or anything whatsoever. It was a very simple game, nothing to it, whereas this new game is very, very different now. And then I started adding modes to the table, starting to change up things a little bit. Because the original game had He-Man multi-ball, Skeletor multi-ball, Castle multi-ball, and Ripper multi-ball, but that was it. Whereas now there's going to be a whole bunch of new content, which I'll get to as well. So another new feature is the ball saver. So instead of it just being a normal ball save that kicks the ball to the flipper, to the plunger lane, now it's going to be Ram Man in the drain, and he's going to be like popping up, wondering what the heck's going on there when the ball drains. So when the ball goes down.
Hey, what are you doing up there?
It's a ball save.
Yeah.
Enough of your your silly games.
That's another thing too. Especially
Hit me on the head. Gee.
so another mode that was added was a
That was fun, wasn't it?
then you have to make the shot to finish that. And then Battle Cat Bumper.
Hold it steady.
Increases score.
Hey, who turned out the lights?
Things change completely.
You'll see who the loser is.
I wasn't sure exactly what direction I was going to go for completely changing the table. So what I did,
Sorry.
now you don't just have the main modes, the extra modes of adding. Now the main objective.
Surely you can do better than that. Enough of your silly games.
Shots, you know, is geared towards a specific thing. And Picker is geared towards action figures. The Ripper ramp, the Road Ripper ramp, this guy here is geared towards vehicles. The Castle ramp is geared towards play sets. So I decided to work with that and be like, okay, so let's make it so that every mode in the game, if you clear it, gives you an action figure or a playset or a vehicle. Let's make it so that each of the main shots, if you're in that mode for that shot, will also give you one of those things. And the idea is you want to collect all of them to clear the game. So that changes everything. That makes the game a much bigger, much more layered and detailed game, right? The other thing is I've also made it so that each mode is independent of each other. And they each have their own progression that is kept throughout the whole game. So these three little extra lights here on each shot that I added are going to indicate the progression of the mode you have highlighted. So in this case, this mode is for vehicles. So I've only got one shot here, so I need two more to collect a vehicle. This one is Castle Multi-Ball, so it's already been cleared, so all three of them are lit and stay lit. For many modes, same idea is that I've had all three of them, so if I made the shot in there, I would start a Manny mode, which is kind of like a Sonic Pinball Mania, where you have multiple modes you can choose from, right? It's not going to just be one mode, it's going to be a bunch of different modes you can toggle between when you enter here and enter that, right? So the other idea is you have Zor here for the Sorceress Struggles mode. You have Horde for the Hordak is Horrible mode, you know, and then so it adds a whole lot more to the game. Then you also have the Havoc staff there, which I added in there as well. And then I updated the back box to make it a little more modern. But then I've also updated the apron completely now, so that you'll have a few new features now. Now you'll have a light here that if this is lit orange, that means you can toggle any of the modes on the table. So that means, you know, any of these new modes that we have, or any of these other modes, whatever is lit as the active mode, when you push the button, it's going to toggle all three of these to the next mode in line. So you can choose what active mode you want for each shot before you actually make the shot, right? You know, so it's going to really allow you a lot of control to change the game up to how you want to play it. So it's easier to understand when you actually play it, but the bottom line is when you push that button while you're just playing, you can change the mode on the fly anytime you want, as long as that shot has been unlocked, right? Now on this side you have, it's actually called an Orko shot now, but the idea is that if you have an Orko shot, well then when the ball is in play, if you hold down the button for 1 second, then Orko will then trap the ball with magic, and then he'll make the ball shoot, you know, into one of the three main shots for you. So the idea is that you can use it as a ball save. If the ball is draining down here, you hold down the button, and before it hits the drain, he'll capture it, and then he'll shoot it up somewhere for you automatically. Or he might make a jackpot shot for you, depending on the mode, right? So it's a very big deal for that feature. The VR room I've been regularly updating. These are actual. This is the actual VR room in Future Pinball with these very detailed scans of the original toys of Castle Grayskull, of Battle Cat, of Stridor, and this is not final, but you know, this is me trying to make a really cool VR room. Okay. And what else we got here? Okay, so I already talked about progress again. So if you pushed the button, all of these will toggle. Okay, magic shots. That's what I was talking about before. That became Orko shots instead of magic shots, but same idea, you know. So actually, I don't know if I can show that here or not. Also stack them. The idea is that you'll get at least one magic shot for every ball. So if you have a 5 ball, and where the ball's at, as long as it's not in the kicker or ready to shoot from the plunger lane. So if I hold it down, there you go. So the idea is Orko's casting a spell, captures the ball, then relocates it, and then shoots it. And there you go. There you go. So you can use those. That could be used at any time during normal gameplay. So let's imagine if your ball was about to drain, during for example. Some modes and during normal gameplay. And there you go. He caught it there, and he's going to shoot it up again. Alright, so, or if it's going to go straight down. Very cool feature. Once you start playing it and using it, it's like, oh yeah, this is cool. So, what do we got here? So, okay, so basically I redid the DMD display, so that's more like a modern display, and I make that work with this as well on the table. It shows like an overlaid full-size image for splash events, or you know, when you collect things or whatnot, you know, it'll show all of our new stuff now, and how many balls and everything else you have. Got an action figure in the top, or too bad. Okay, so like, yeah, perfect example, you know, like right there.
Action figures each sold separately.
So when you select the action figure in this case, you get too bad. Oh yeah, too bad.
From Mattel.
And this is another mode, Sorceress Struggles. So the idea is that you know, you have to complete the mode. Your flippers will flip on you. They'll reverse back and forth, so it's going to confuse you because their powers keep working in reverse. You know, so, and you'll see here appear as a.
I'm using my strength. Castle Grayskull, hear my command.
And then same idea with Hordak is horrible. Your flippers won't reverse, but you have to basically make shots when they're blue, not when they're red, because he's gonna use he wants to power his Magna Beam transporter. And you can see the favorite lighting.
More power! Hold it steady.
Alright. So, yeah. And that's another mode, you know, just all sorts of stuff going on with that. So now we get to the point of something I've done for the first time. Well, second time, actually. You saw in my previous Silent Hill video how I learned how to build tables in Blender. Well, this is the first time I've really done it with the purpose of actual baking. I decided to do that with this before doing it on Silent Hill because I wanted to learn how to, you know, see how well I could use pre-baked lighting and shadows combined with Future Pinball's real-time dynamic lighting. So this is the table built up in Blender. So I had to do all that myself. And then this is what it looks like in Blender. Okay, this is, you know, I'm actually really proud of how this turned out. Like this looks freaking awesome. You know, like look how amazing that looks. So that's with full ray tracing. You know, if we ever got to the point where, say, something like VPE is released and we have very fast computers, well, then this is what tables can eventually look like one day. You know, but yeah, this is the Future Pinball table in Blender being rendered out for pre-baked lighting. And then this is the VR room that you saw from before. You can see the huge difference between shadows and reflections and other stuff like that, right? So the idea is that you can tell Blender to render it and then make the textures you use for the models permanently look like that, all right? So that was me learning how to do all that. And then now you can see the difference. This is how it originally looked in Future Pinball with just a normal model. But then with the baked lighting and shadows, now it looks much more realistic, right? And then you can see how much better it looks in the actual game. Same thing with Castle Grayskull and Stridor, you know, so you can use that combined with Future Pinball's real-time lighting. It can look really nice. And then I tried painting for the first time with a 3D scan of a Snake Mountain. Had no textures, no nothing at all, very detailed. So I had to convert it, reduce it, which is a lot of work, because there's a lot more than what you see before I get to this point to make that happen. And so then this is me after I painted it and learned how, it's all in Blender. It's nothing fancy, very rudimentary tools to be honest. But yeah, this is I painted all this and then it's now on the actual texture map. And then this is it inside the actual game in the VR room. And I did the same thing with a snake sculpt I found. I had to paint all this up, create a new texture for it, and then now he's in the game in the corner as well. And then another thing I did was the one ramp, which for anyone who's paid attention, this table's layout is basically Tron Legacy, for anyone who didn't notice. So for the ramp that goes down to the left side, I decided to replace it with the Snake Mountain gate and doorway, and as well as the Snake Mountain Bridge. So I got these models online. I bought those online and then did a lot of work to convert them down because they're very high poly models, right? And then did a little bit of baking with those as well. And now you can see with the shadows and everything, it looks really, really good. And this is the actual ramp. The ball comes down here, right? So, and then when the ball flicks down the ramp, depending on what mode is active, it'll make this flash with the neon to match. It looks really cool. And well, here's a quick demo of that working. Snake looks at it. Hey, what's going on? And there you go. And then now, this is showing me actually applying the baked textures to the actual game for GI lights and shadows. So I've never done this before at this level. I've never tried doing it for the entire table like this. And as you can see, look at how this turned out. Like this looks this is the actual in-game. This isn't Blender. This is the actual game. Like look how amazing that turned out, guys. Like this is I'm so happy, and there's still so much more I can do beyond what you see here, and this is just like it just turned out fantastic. I'm just so happy with how this turned out. Like this looks amazing when you see it in game, and when you see it in VR, oh man, like it just looks amazing, guys. And then the last thing I got done was an Orko mode where basically Orko pissed off Man-at-Arms again because of a bad magic trick. So then you have to chase him all over the table to catch him before time runs out, basically. And that's one of the Manny modes. So when you hit 3 shots for with Manny modes active into the kicker, well then you get to choose to play a bunch of different smaller mini games or mini modes, if you will. And Orko is out of here is the first one I've completed. So that's another one that you'll see. And then someone giving some suggestions. Fans like to see lots of stuff added in. And then now this is where I'm at, so this might be used in a new mode, a new Manny mode, where you might have to bash some bots, Skeletor's Robot Knights, and and that's basically where I'm at now. I know that's a lot to go through, but since I've never talked about it on my channel or showed anything, I figured why not? Again, I'm not feeling the best today, so I figured I'd just do a video where I'm showing you guys what's going on without having to play anything or that, and so yeah, so this is what I'm working on finishing. I basically have to get through finishing the rest of the modes, and then when the table is at a point where it's like done, then I still have to do DOF, and then I have to do the pup pack and all that, so it's still a long ways off, even though the core of the game is done. It's just the extra Manny modes, and there's so much more than what I showed you here. When you actually play it, there's there's just so much cool stuff on it. So yeah. So now that I've yapped about that for so long, that brings me to the end of this video, guys. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed all these new updates of what's been going on in Future Pinball land. So anyone, like there's been a lot going on with updates for Future Pinball and especially Visual Pinball. Like Newak has been updating Visual Pinball like a mad fool, like holy cow, he's been adding a lot of cool stuff to Visual Pinball. With the edit for people who create stuff, a ton of features on there, and then with the Blender toolkit and the baked lighting, he's added that toolkit and those extra lighting features to Visual Pinball to work around Visual Pinball's limitations of not being able to do real-time lighting like Future Pinball can. So they work well hand in hand, and that's why you needed a 64-bit update, because it needs a lot of textures to make that work and a lot of models to make that work, right? But it does that automatically for the table creators. Well, not automatically, but allows them to do the tables and make them in a way that makes them look way better than what Visual Pinball can natively actually render itself, right? So it's a big, long process, but the bottom line is he's added a lot of amazing features to that, as well as refraction on plastics and stuff like that, which I wish I had on Future Pinball. And so for me, I got to do all that pre-baked stuff manually, whereas on Visual Pinball they get to do all that stuff much easier. Let's just say that, much, much easier and much more thorough for the entire table, because, there's benefits to both approaches, right? So, yeah, both Future Pinball's updates have been great for everyone. So I highly recommend you get all these new updates and the newest updated tables. Again, they play awesome. They play awesome today, guys. Future Pinball is not the bad playing FizX thing it used to be anymore. Yeah, I think everyone would be surprised if they gave them a try. So that's about it. I guess I didn't want to yammer on too much, but get the newest Visual Pinball updates. Get the newest Future Pinball updates. If you're a VR player and you got a fast PC, try both out. They both look amazing in VR. Especially the newer updated tables for both, like the newer VPW Blender Toolkit tables and all the PinEvent tables. They just look amazing. So give them all a try, guys. So yeah, I guess that's the end of this video. So I'll stop yammering. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully I can have a cooler video for Masters of the Universe to show you guys at some point. But I'll definitely show something on the channel eventually. Anyways, talk to you later, guys. Bye.